We're now at part three, recent monetary history. So what happened in the NASDAQ bubble, the dot com burst boom bust of 2001? Well, a combination of rapidly increasing stock prices, market confidence that the companies would turn future profits, individual speculation in stocks, and widely available venture capital created an environment in which many investors were willing to overlook traditional metrics such as price to earning ratio in favor of basing confidence on technological advancements. So this was the time when I started first working as a programmer. And I remember, I was working for a startup, thebrain.com in Santa Monica at the time. We had lots of venture capital funding. And basically all these venture capitalists were speculating that all these .com properties, web properties, would return future profits, which they didn't. So eventually this bubble burst in 2000, and I graduated 2003, and I couldn't find a programming job at all. So I went into the mortgage industry, which was another bubble about to burst. So before we go any further, we have to describe the importance of a false flag attack. What does it mean and who gains from it? So a false flag attack is derived from the military concept of flying false colors. False flags are when governments and other organizations carry out covert operations to deliberately blame others for the atrocities in order to mobilize military intervention, and prioritize regime change. Okay? And a false flag or a black flag is described as a covert operation designed to deceive in such a way that the operations appear as though they are carried out by entities, groups, or nations other than those who actually planned and executed them. Operations carried out during peacetime by civilian organizations as well as covert government agencies may, by extension, be called false flag operations if they seek to hide the real organization behind an operation. Here's another definition. False flag, a horrific stage event blamed on a political enemy and used as a pretext to start a war or enact draconian laws in the name of national security. So for ages, great empires, the leaders of great empires, want to get more power. And so how can they do this? There's two ways primarily. They could control more land and resources which belong to other nations, or they could lessen the rights and civil liberties of their citizens. And the best way to do this really is through false flag attacks, because it's staged and it's controlled and you can blame it on another group. And this can either motivate your citizens to go fight in a war for you to gain more land and resources, or they get scared and they give up some of their liberties for more protection. And usually a false flag attack occurs and you don't find out till many decades later it was actually a false flag attack. And by then, no one cares because, the empire would have gotten the benefit from new land or new resource control, or, people would have lost their rights and they'll be accustomed to a new lifestyle. So what are the top 5 signs of a false flag terror attack? Well, one, those horrific images are overused by the media to shock the public. Drills of a similar attack occur in the same day in the same area. Number 3, eyewitness accounts do not match the official story. 4, conflicting evidence is not repeated by the media. 5, used as excuse to curtail rights or start a war. Right. So these are the top 5 signs of a false flag terror attack. Now let's talk about what were the repercussions of 9/11. Now, many people in the alternative media suggest 9/11 was a false flag attack. And I'm not suggesting that here. All I'm saying is that after the official investigation of 9/11, there was a lot of other independent investigations about that attack. And through the years, they've compiled a pretty compelling case. And, I encourage you guys to look at the other evidence. as usual, don't take my word for everything. I encourage you to do your own research. But regardless of whether 9/11 was a false flag attack or not, there were a lot of repercussions. So, of course, there was a global war on terror. Since 9/11, the U.S. has been at war in Middle East. Afghanistan has been going on for 15 years now, and most likely it's going to go much longer. And how many times has Iraq been invaded? This is what, like the fourth or fifth time. And many other agencies were created. Department of Homeland Security, the NSA's powers were expanded. They started spying both on foreigners and on domestic people with their NSA spying. And they started wiretapping, also on Facebook. If you're any social networking, they look at what you're sending out to people, especially if you communicate with people outside your country. And there's lots of legislation was passed to diminish civil liberties, such as the Patriot Act, Military Commission Act, creation of a torture policy, allowance of extradition. The media became more complicit also with the government. Before, the mainstream media did more investigate journalism, but now really the mainstream is just used to spread propaganda. It's not really, the mainstream media doesn't really do investigative journalism anymore. And executive powers have also been increased a lot. And more continued economic dominance by oil and banking cartels, keeping the U.S. in slavery to fossil fuels and perpetual financial debt. And of course, the economy has melted down several times, during the dot-com and also during the subprime crisis. And the value of the dollar continues to decline, and there's more injustice worldwide. Now it's not only in the Middle East, but also in Ukraine. The U.S. is trying to contain China. They're having sanctions against Brazil. It's being spread worldwide. And they're all using the scapegoat of a global war on terror. So what happened is subprime crisis of 2000, 2009. So let me just take a drink of water. This was a perfect storm. It was fueled primarily by greed. During this time, I worked for several mortgage industries. So, I saw, people in their teens or early 20s making tens of thousands of dollars to get everyone they knew into more and more debt by refinancing, and the biggest type of refinance were subprime mortgages, where anyone could get a house, as long as you had a pulse, you could do 0% down, 0% interest rate for a while, and as you didn't even need a job, you could get a big house. So there was a bunch of these subprime loans, and eventually, it led to foreclosures. And the housing market exploded, and the house prices went down. So everyone had reverse mortgages, and many businesses and houses were foreclosed. And what the banks did, they consolidated, they transferred more of the people's wealth to them by, taking the foreclosed houses, foreclosed businesses, and at the same time, they were bailed out. Like when Lehman Brothers collapsed because of all the debt, it was about to take the other major banks such as Chase, Bank of America, with them. But, Obama made an executive order to bail out these too big to fail banks. And they were bailed out with trillions of dollars. And that money came from the American taxpayers, and it was transferred to these financial elites, these owners of these banks. And, those CEOs were getting massive bonuses for this scheme that they did. And basically, since that day, the U.S. economy really never really recovered. All they did was print a ton of money through their quantitative easing programs. So there's another major crash happening again really soon. So here's an example. Here's the Dow Jones Industrial Average since 1970. You see, it's been going up exponentially for the last few decades. Here's 2000, and here was the dot-com boom and bust era. Then here's the subprime mortgage of 2008. Now look, we're all the way up to 18,000. Now you know what goes up eventually has to go down. So the next major bust is going to be every major asset class, not only housing, technology, but it's going to be the US dollar itself. It's going to be the banking institutions altogether. It's going to be basically the destruction of the US dollar. You know, it's going to be destroyed, and all the major financial institutions that are behind it is going to be destroyed as well. So it's going to be the biggest crash in US history, which is coming, you know, in the not too distant future. You know, I would say within the next year or two, this is going to really get serious. So why is the petrodollar dying, and what will be the repercussions? So many countries in the world, especially in the Middle East, which is the most oil rich, are getting off the petrodollar standard, like Hussein from Iraq, Gaddafi from Libya, and the Iranian president. They're starting to refuse American dollars for oil. And you know that was spreading worldwide. And like I don't know if you're aware, like China and Russia, they made a major oil deal, and they're not going to use oil dollars anymore. They're using their own currencies, right? So this is, you know, because the petrodollar is dying, is going to lower the demand for the U.S. dollars. And so, what's primarily backing the U.S. dollar buying power now? And the answer, I believe, is war and intimidation. So this is the end of part 4. Part 3. We're going to continue with part 4, which is the current global financial situation.